It helps if my mic is in position. Hey, good evening and welcome to this week's edition of the Ride Along Radio Show. The show where we give you our perspective as grizzled police veterans who patrol the streets of Los Angeles for decades, in my case, from the 80s to the 90s into the 2000s. And I got out like in 2011. So that's like 4 decades of policing in this town. Well, I'm riding an L car tonight. I'm by myself, at least for the time being. I'm going to have a ride along a little bit later. But my guest host, both of my co-hosts are out because they're old dudes and they have all kind of physical maladies. So Gil is at home and he's nursing a cold, and Kent had some kind of a surgery on his eyes and he couldn't see his way in today. So I wonder if he'll be like Clayton Bigsby, the Dave Chappelle guy who couldn't see. Anyway, so hey, I'm George Holt, and we got a whole bunch of stuff to talk about. A lot of interesting stuff happened in the news. Typically, we kind of go over what happened last show first. We go over our social media feedback, but last week was Thanksgiving, so we did not have didn't have a show on Thanksgiving because our show is always on Thursdays. 2 weeks before that, though, or the week before that, it was just me and Kent Lee here, and we covered some stuff. And one of the things we covered that we kind of got some feedback on was the fact that there has been this, people are calling it like a spate or a spurt or a spree of police officers who've been killed lately, and the suspects have all been white males. And people are wondering why there isn't some conservative backlash for that, just like there was when the police officers were being killed seemingly more frequently by people of color, in particular people who could be tied to the Black Lives Matter movement, or et cetera, like the Dallas shooter who was blown up by Dallas PD SWAT with the bomb robot, or Dallas PD EOD with the bomb robot. So, and I said this before, I'll say it again because it came up again online in a social media chat room. It's not unusual for white men to kill police officers in this country. It falls in line with everything else that happens in this country. When you have a dominant ethnic group, a majority ethnic group, they're going to do more of everything. They're going to do more good stuff. They're going to do more bad stuff. More white people committed suicide today than black people, and more white people got married today than, and more white people are going to win the lottery this year, and et cetera, et cetera. They're going to do more of everything, including the bad stuff. So it's not really newsworthy when you have the last 10 police officers who've been killed have been killed by white men. People are just wondering where the backlash is, and I tell you there's no backlash because it's not really newsworthy. If you'd like to talk to me about that or something else, you can call us in at 323-293-3375. That's the number to call in. I was thinking about doing a segment called Ask a Cop, where you could either call in and ask some question that you always wanted to ask a police officer, or you leave it in the YouTube comments. Just you leave your question down there, and if it is a pertinent, relevant, and worthy question that we think people really want to know the answer to, then we would address it here on the air. So anyway, we probably will start doing that, and maybe at the end of this show we'll point that out again. And if you have anything you always wanted to know, how come cops do this or how come cops don't do that? Like there was a guy who asked me once, how come cops don't wear sneakers? They gotta chase people and they gotta sneak around and try to catch people. Why do they make you guys wear those big black heavy boots? That's a good question. It's not something that I would ever thought about because it's just, we just don't. But, the reason is you got to have some kind of protective footwear because there's all kind of stuff you got to do. And if you're running around out there in sneakers, you're going to mess around and get a broken foot, broken toe, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, they're better for chasing people and probably better for climbing fences and walls, but you got to have protective footwear. And that's why you see police officers wearing those big black heavy boots out there in the street. We actually do have our next segment being news of the day. And we had an incident last week. This is Thursday, it was earlier this week. We had an incident on the campus of Ohio State University where an individual who apparently we know now was a lone wolf terrorist decided that he was going to commit an act of terror on campus. And immediately everybody jumped on it and said, oh my God, there's been a shooter on campus. That's how it came across, actually. I was sitting around with some business associates. I get a buzz on my phone because I subscribe to Al Jazeera, BBC, and CNN. And I'm always getting these news alerts from one of those three sources, and it said there's an active shooter on a campus at Ohio State University. Well, as it turns out, that wasn't the case. However, it seems that there's always this narrative to call something an active shooter and to blame things on guns and gun violence, even when that's not the case. So apparently, he decided that he was going to carry out this rampage, and it was based on some beliefs he has that as a Muslim, he's oppressed, that the Muslim world is oppressed, and that America meddles in the affairs of Muslims worldwide, which there's probably some merit to that argument. But he decided he was going to act in a violent way, which is not cool. So he went on a rampage and started running a bunch of people over with his car. And then he got out of his car with a knife and started slashing people until he was shot to death by an Ohio State University campus police officer, who's now being lauded as a hero like he should. So there's a video that we have on that, and we're going to play that video, and then we'll have discussed it. That first one, the OSU attacker, Facebook rant investigated. And if you want to call after the clip, it's 323-293-3375. We can talk about what we just saw.
We have learned of a Facebook post just moments before this all happened. ABC's chief investigative correspondent Brian Ross with the new clues at this hour into what might have motivated the suspect to do this.
Just 3 minutes before the first 911 call today, Abdul Razak Ali Artan posted this message on Facebook, according to law enforcement officials. "I can't take it anymore. America, stop interfering with other countries, especially the Muslim Ummah. We are not weak. We are not weak. Remember that."
Certainly that authorities need to treat this as a potential terrorist attack.
As police and the FBI tonight carry out a search warrant at Artan's home in Columbus.
Talk to anybody that he might have associated with, find out what they knew.
The picture emerging of him is that of a Somali immigrant.
Abdul Razak Artan, cum laude.
Who in this school video, taken just 5 months ago, seemed to be living the American dream, until he turned on his adopted country, becoming radicalized based on what he read and heard online. Artan was recently profiled in the campus newspaper, The Lantern, blaming the media for making Muslims feel scared on campus.
So many people who are flipped by ISIS propaganda remotely look like they're leading successful lives. It's so hard to predict when the propaganda will get through to them to the point where they crack and go violent.
In recent weeks, ISIS has been urging its followers to copy the vehicle attack that took place in Nice, France, when 84 people were killed by a terrorist driving a semi-truck through the Bastille Day celebration there. And just 2 days ago, ISIS posted this new video instructing its followers how to use a knife to attack non-believers.
But back to the suspect, and it would appear such a stark contrast just a few months ago at that other graduation
That's
he was
right,
at.
so happy.
Any other clues from the Facebook post?
Well, yes, David. In fact, he actually calls himself in that Facebook post a lone wolf and says, if you want us Muslims to start carrying out lone wolf attacks, then make peace with the Muslim world. David, those are his words today.
All right, Brian Ross, you'll stay on this throughout the night. Thank you.
You know, one of the things I find interesting about that is that people talk about these lone wolf attacks, and that is the thing that's very frightening to law enforcement, because usually people who are involved in organized crime or any sort of a criminal enterprise or criminal conspiracy, and conspiracy is two or more people who decide that they're going to get together and plot out some heinous or horrific crimes or whatever, or any kind of crime really. Those people flip on each other, and that's how, or somebody talks, or somebody's girlfriend talks, or somebody's wife gets pissed off and tell on everybody. You know, this is how these kind of guys, these kind of rings get cracked. Well, what's dangerous about the lone wolf is he's not talking to anybody. Even if he's batshit crazy, he's only talking to himself. So there's no chatter on the web. There's no emails to intercept. There's no pillow talk going on. There's none of the usual things that provide these clues, which is why it's so important that people are aware of their neighbors and what's going on. And I'm not trying to institute like they had in Soviet Russia, where they have like a neighborhood snitch program or anything like that, you know. But truly, if you see something, say something, because someone had to be paying attention to this young man and seeing that he was slowly becoming more radicalized. And honestly, it doesn't sound like it was even slow. It sounds like it was a pretty good flip in the course of a year. Guy like that is not just going to sit there and just decide over one weekend that he's going to go out and start murdering people, which is what he tried to do. He didn't kill anybody. He got himself killed. But he was trying. It wasn't for lack of trying. Okay, he was trying to kill a bunch of people. It just didn't work out for him. He wasn't very good at that. So someone saw this happening. Someone saw his behavior change, someone had to see that he was becoming more radicalized. I'm not even sure if there's a signs and symptoms that they've made public that you can tell when someone's becoming radicalized or not. But, you can tell if someone's demeanor's changed. We saw that with the Orlando shooter at the Pulse nightclub, which, this show's only been on for a little over a year. We started in October of 2015. Here we are in December. We've been on air for 14 months, and we've covered numerous incidents like this, either mass shootings or other kind of terror attacks that happen right here in the United States. That's a damn shame. We have to do whatever we can do to make sure that we minimize those occurrences. But somebody had to have seen this coming before it just broke out. Because even if you say, I don't want to get him in trouble, you are potentially saving his life. Because these guys typically don't say that, hey, I'm going to go in here and then I'm going to go do my time. They usually do plan on dying in place. In fact, I think that's part of the shine for them, is that they go in there and they sacrifice their lives, which, for somebody to become that ardent and that strident in their beliefs, I don't know how we miss those symptoms, but we do. So that's why the lone wolf is so frightening, because there's really no way to know until something pops off. And then we go back and we do what they call the psychological autopsy, where you start putting things together and say, he did start going on these websites. He did make this comment to the next door neighbor. There was these complaints or people making comments and observations about how he had changed, but nobody said anything to anybody who could do anything about it. So that's very interesting that he described himself as a lone wolf, because that's exactly what he was. Also, here's the other side of that lone wolf thing. Because there's one guy operating by himself, or some cases one girl operating by themselves, they do not have the support system. That kid clearly didn't know where to get a gun. I'm not sure where he's from initially or originally or what his background is, but he's a college student, so he's probably not some Billy Badass who knows where all the stuff is in the streets. But had that dude been able to get access to a gun, I think we would have seen a different result. He used what he had. Also, as we saw in that video, there was that attack in Paris last year where a person drove that big rig truck into that crowd and killed 80 plus people. I guess he figured he would try to, do something like that. But with what he had at his disposal, he had a vehicle and he had a knife from somewhere, probably a kitchen knife. And, he went out to achieve whatever his goals were. Somebody made a comment that, it's only when a Muslim does something like this that their religious affiliation is brought up. Well, that's true. But in our day and age, as of right now, in 2016, that's who's doing the violence in the name of their God. Not all Muslims, of course, not most Muslims, of course. It's a small fraction, very small percentage even. But they are the ones who are letting it be known why they're doing it, and it's in the name of religion. So that's why the religion gets brought up, because we want to see if it's terror related. Now, let's keep in mind that you don't always have to have a religious affiliation in order to be considered to be a terrorist. Anytime you use violence to overthrow a government or to influence a population, it doesn't have to be religious based. It can just be government based. Timothy McVeigh wasn't necessarily operating on the tenets of Christianity. Timothy McVeigh wanted to overthrow our government. Timothy McVeigh had some very strong anti-government feelings, and that's why he did what he did. He's a terrorist nonetheless. He was not a religious terrorist. But in the case of what we just saw with this young man at OSU, and how many other scenarios we've seen since then, that's what we see. We see religious terrorism. So there's that. I did find some comments from last week that I want to talk about, and it's this one comment I didn't expect anybody to make. But Imani Niles says, referring to the week before last show, Kent Lee, you have been missed, with a little smiley face emoticon, which I thought was cool. Because, I'm sure Kent doesn't expect that either. Somebody actually missed Kent. Here's the other one. Somebody says, and who was it? Was it Willie Sweet? It's Cabot Haynes. He says, is it me, or is it a problem that the last few police shootings of unarmed black men were by officers of 5 years of experience or less? Cabot Haynes, it's funny you would say that, because I was having a conversation with a veteran police officer probably about 2-3 weeks ago, and he said the exact same thing. And what he said was, that's the age. When I say age, that's the the length of time of experience that you start to see problems. That officers are all the dumb shit happens mostly in that first 5 years of your career. And if you're not going to make it, if you're going to get fired, it's usually in that first 5 years. Not always, but many times it's in that first 5 years, not even counting that 1 year probationary period that we have to do. But that is not to say that these officers are more racist in that first 5 years or anything like that. It's with anything else, man, there's a learning curve. And you're going to make mistakes until you learn how to do something properly. I don't care if it's flipping burgers or playing a damn guitar or doing taxes or doing somebody's hair. You're going to make those mistakes in those first 5 years. It just so happens that in this line of work, we play for keeps. And a mistake is going to mean somebody's loss of somebody's life, loss of somebody's freedom. Give you an example, and this is kind of a gentle example, which is why I don't mind sharing it with you. My ex-wife calls me one day. She says, "Hey, I got to go do community service because I got a ticket." And so she does community service or whatever, because I was only mildly interested in whatever she was going through. So I asked her, "Hey, what happened? How'd you get a ticket? Why'd you have to do community service?" She says, "Because I got pulled over, and my friend's kid was in the car. My friend was in the car. My friend's kid was in the car, and the kid didn't have a seatbelt on. And since I was driving, I got the ticket." And I said, "No, that's not what's supposed to happen. Under California law, the driver will get the ticket if the parent of the child is not in the car. If the parent of that unrestrained child is not in the vehicle, then the driver is responsible. If the parent of that unrestrained child is in the vehicle, then the parent gets the ticket." Okay? Now, she took it to court, and she went back and saw the judge, and the judge goes, "You know what? You're absolutely right. Hey, you weren't supposed to get that ticket." But guess what? She'd already done the community service. She didn't even pay the fine. Had she paid the fine, they could have gave her money back. She went and did community service wherever she did it, and she wasn't able to get that time back. So, she was a victim of a police officer who didn't know how to do their job. And again, this is a very gentle example. She didn't lose any freedom. She wasn't hurt. She didn't face any kind of horrible accusations because somebody didn't know how to do their job. But this is an example. And when I was talking to her about it, she said it was two officers, and one was clearly a younger, newer officer. And, that officer just made that mistake, and it cost her some time. Fortunately, that's all it cost her. But, in any job, you're going to have those mistakes get made. So it stands to reason, if somebody's going to shoot somebody and maybe doesn't need to be shot, it's going to be the less experienced person. Like I said, it's like anything else. So I hope that addresses your comment or your question about, is it a problem that the last few police shootings of unarmed men have been by police officers with 5 years of experience or less. Where's the other one? Oh, Kevin Haynes also says, Kevin Haynes is on a roll. Not to blame Philando Castile, because remember we talked about that Philando Castile shooting where the officer is going to be charged. Geronimo Yanez is going to be charged in the shooting. Philando Castile, who was in the Minneapolis area, got pulled over by the officer, tells the officer he's got a pistol, he's got a permit for it, and the officer drew his gun and shot him dead. And apparently there was no reason for that to happen, according to the DA. The DA reviewed the video, they reviewed the audio, and they said not at any time did Philando Castile exhibit any signs that he was going to be aggressive, that he was doing anything other than what most people are told to do if they have a concealed weapons permit, which is tell the officer you have a concealed weapon. He did that, and the officer reacted poorly. So what Cabot Haynes says is, not to blame Philando Castile, but I'm waiting till an officer asks me if I have a gun. I feel like if he asks me, then he is ready to accept my answer. That's true. And I believe Kent said the same thing. Kent said he's not going to even try to trigger that. My thing, and as I said this when Kent was on the show, my thing with that is I don't want that officer to ask me to get out of the car. And now instead of getting out of the car, I'm trying to explain to that officer, okay, I got a gun or whatever, because now it looks like I'm trying not to get out of the car. Or I get out of the car and they see the print of my pistol on my side, or they see the holster sticking out the bottom of my shirt or something, and then now they're going to freak out because I didn't tell them I had a gun. So for me, I feel like it's in my best interest to say, hey, I got a gun, here's why. Of course, Philando Castile did that, and it didn't work out for him. So that's one of those things. But hopefully we'll see some justice done on that, because apparently it wasn't something that was supposed to happen. Okay, so we actually do have a can we cue that other video up, that McDonald's video? I think that's one of those things that we should talk about, and I'll bring my ride along on. get my ride-along buckled into the seatbelt in the car.
Northeast Kansas, I'm Harrison Drake. Thanks for joining us. Tonight, McDonald's has fired an employee accused of putting mustard in a Topeka police officer's drink, and now police are investigating the incident as a crime. KSNT News' reporter Tom Weinig broke the story and is live at Independence and Topeka. Tom, what have you uncovered?
Well, Harrison, when you go to McDonald's, you expect a nice, refreshing drink and not to find mustard inside. After McDonald's launched a lengthy investigation that ended about an hour and a half ago, that employee that was held responsible has been fired. It's more than these arches that are golden at this North Topeka McDonald's.
I certainly wouldn't want mustard in my Dr. Pepper.
Take a look. A Topeka police officer found mustard in his Dr. Pepper when he went through the drive-thru Friday night, and it's left a foul taste in the mouths of customers.
They're supposed to be looking out for the community and doing their job, and they get a break and want something to eat and drink. Yeah, you know, it's perfectly natural to get what you paid for, and certainly not mustard in your Dr. Pepper.
The McDonald's owners tell me they are shocked by the isolated actions of an employee and that this employee no longer works for their organization. However, this extra ingredient isn't going to deter this woman from getting her fast food fix.
I was shocked because I didn't think anyone would do that, but it is the closest, one of the closest restaurants to my work, and it's cheap, so.
2 weeks ago, the same thing happened to a Kansas Highway Patrol trooper. Now, they say that mustard incident was reported to the McDonald's management. However, when I called a little earlier today, they said that they didn't hear anything about that. In North Topeka, Tom Weinig, KSNT News.
Thanks, Tom. Also, police.
All right, thanks, Tom. Hey, got my ride along in the car. Trish Nasingham,
yes,
also known as Baby Sis Trish, sister to the usual host Gil Contreras, and who brings some insight and intelligent articulation to a lot of these topics we talk about.
Thank you.
And a very welcome political slant to this. We gotta work to balance out what the damage that Kent and Gil did 2 weeks ago when I was in Florida. The week after the election, that Thursday following the election, boy, they were in here having a big old Republican National Convention here. So we're gonna come and run some of those spirits out today.
I know Gil was so funny. He's like, you should do it, and then that way you can be like liberal radio or something. I was like, oh my gosh! Yeah.
Wow. So look, on this thing that just happened, we just looked at this person who put mustard in the cop's drink. So here's my thing. First of all, there's a section in California in the Health and Safety Code called adulteration of food. And adulteration of food means you have to put something in the food that's not food. Mustard is food. Mm-hmm. Okay? So I can understand them firing him. I just don't know what's the charge. You know, maybe Kansas law is different. I don't know. I should ask my son. He's a cop in Kansas. I should ask him. You know, what's the difference here? I just don't understand how putting mustard in somebody's drink could get you arrested. I can see it getting you fired.
Got arrested.
Oh, yeah, he got arrested. Yeah, well, no, I'm sorry. They're investigating it as a crime because obviously they want to try to.
Well, don't they have to figure out whether or not there's more than mustard in there? What if
thank you.
What if he urinated in it and then put mustard?
That's what I'm thinking. Maybe they're not saying because mustard is strong enough to cover, some other substances that may be in there. And they said it happened to another cop about a month before that, mm-hmm. a Kansas State trooper. Mustard. Why mustard? You know what I mean? What's the mustard masking? And I'm going to tell you right now, any police officer, and this cop went to the drive-thru, which is a no-no, by the way. You know, if you're going to go to a place, at least give them the benefit of you walking in full uniform so they can get a little benefit of police presence, et cetera, et cetera. Also, when you go to the drive-thru, as a tactical matter, you're going to get boxed in possibly. There's very few drive-thrus that have that open space over here.
Yeah.
Most of them kind of channelize you, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's not that you're going to get ambushed at the drive-thru, although that could happen. What if there's an emergency call and you're stuck between two soccer mom minivans full of kids who want their Happy Meals?
I know, right?
You know what I mean? Yeah. That's just a bad look. You don't go to the drive-thru. Yeah. So that was mistake number one. Also, maybe figured, hey, if I go to the drive-thru, they won't see me, they won't see who it is, and they won't do anything to my food either. Maybe that's the other thing. But the drink is the last thing they make, right? The drink is they'll do your drink right there, and then hand it to you. So that's not really effective. So the problem is, again, if you're a police officer, and this was said to me very early in my career, if you're a police officer and you're in uniform and you go out to eat, which we all do at least once a day because you're at work for 10, sometimes 12 hours, eventually somebody's going to do something to your food. I know. That's disheartening, isn't it?
It is. It is. I don't know. There have been people who, I don't know. I just think that's not, I don't know.
It's nasty, isn't it?
It's just, so disrespectful. But, there's other ways to get your anger out, I suppose. But
listen, and here's the thing. There are people who work in these industries who just do stuff to people's food anyway, just to be assholes.
Yeah.
And it's not even that it's a cop. So when a cop comes along, they're gonna get the double whammy with mustard on top, because I remember we had a situation at my last agency, and I won't identify the agency, but when I tell you the story, you'll know where I worked. Get a call one day that one of the workers at this place where they make food that goes on airplanes saw the other workers spitting on the salads.
Eeks.
Or spitting into the salads and mixing it up for the first class passengers. That's only people getting a salad on airplanes, first class passengers, right? So this person, these employees are spitting in these salads. Yeah, it's nasty, right? And I guess the other employee had the same reaction you did, and they called the police, which was the right thing to do. We got officers show up, and they don't know what to charge a person with, and they're like, well, how do we investigate this? How do we classify it? We get a sergeant shows up and says, well, maybe it's battery. How's it battery? Where's the battery? Well, because if you spit on somebody, that's battery, right? Yeah. Well, they're spitting on the food, and then the people are eating the food. No, that's a stretch. It's not battery. It's adulteration of food is what it is, because you're adding non-food substance to somebody's food, and it has to be a harmful substance, and saliva could be
it's dirty.
A harmful substance. Yeah, you can get sick from that, like seriously. Which leads me back to the mustard thing. If it's just mustard, good luck saying it's harmful. But I think it's more than mustard, especially if somebody else did it at another restaurant to another cop.
They just have to double check. It'd be silly to just say,
oh, it's just mustard.
Oh, it's mustard. We'll just let it, and we'll just fire the guy. No, you got to make sure there's no other, there's no other body fluid in there. That's disgusting.
Well, okay, and that's the thing. So we had we did a show about 6 months ago where a guy at Subway put meth into a cop's drink. And the cops drive into a call after they finish eating, and they start tripping. And the guy realizes that he's got something, because it turns out the guy was a narcotic expert. So he's getting all these signs and symptoms that he recognizes as objective signs and symptoms of being under influence. So he pulls over and calls somebody, and they come out and treat him on the scene and take him away or whatever. But that's bad news.
That's scary.
Yeah, that is scary. But again, you run that risk. About 5 years ago, there was actually about 6-7 years ago, there was a guy who got caught who spit onto a cop's burger, and the cop thought to look because cop comes in, the guy says, hey, give me a cheeseburger and fries, and the cashier goes, hey, make a cheeseburger. It's for a cop. And so the cop's like, why did he say that for? What difference does that make? Mm-hmm. So the cop gets the burger, unwraps it, looks in it, and you can see where the dude just hawked up a big nasty loogie onto the burger. See, I might not be a cop anymore if that happened to me. You know what I mean?
Oh, gosh.
But yeah, he saw it. And so one of my guys I used to work with thought it would be funny to play this trick on one of our coworkers. He was friendly with the people at the restaurant I used to go to all the time. He goes, hey, man, my buddy's on his way to come over here, and he's going to order. And when he orders, I want you to repeat the order and say it's for a cop. Just to mess with him. So he does that, and my boy comes on cork. Hey, man, what's that mean, man? Hey, man, what's that mean? So what is for a cop? It was a big practical joke.
That's funny.
But the cashier didn't think it was funny because he got caught up in it, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, anytime you're in uniform, you run the risk of somebody doing something to your food. Sorry. And if you're out there and you're in uniform and you didn't know that,
that sucks.
It does. It does.
Nice.
I got horror stories, but this is a family show. So we won't go into that.
My kids are listening tonight.
See? All right. Hello, kids. Yeah. You just had a son, 11th birthday?
He did. Yeah, he turned 11. Mason turned 11 yesterday.
Happy birthday, Mason. Yeah. 11 years old. That's pretty cool, man.
Yeah.
All right. Well, hey, we're going to take a break, and we're going to come back and jump right into some other stuff. Hey, 323-293-3375 if you want to call when we come back, and we'll see you in a bit.
All you Mexicans, you must go.
All right. Welcome back to Ride Along Radio Show, and that's my favorite song. That's why I had it playing 2 shows in a row. That's just right now. That was "We the People" by Tribe Called Quest, and that's for a couple of reasons. It's my favorite song right now. It really speaks to the timbre of the times in terms of exclusion and not being appreciative of diversity, et cetera, et cetera. It's really, and that was I think that's the last record Fife made with him too. Rest in peace, Fife Dog. So
Speaking of relevance, I just watched "Bury Me at Wounded Knee." It was a movie that HBO made in 2007. It was so good because when you look at, you wonder like, well, what's the big deal at Standing Rock?
Right.
I'm like,
right.
Oh, okay. Like,
and you know what?
Come on.
And that's a subject that I want to tackle, Standing Rock, because that whole Dakota pipeline, et cetera, and how that's becoming like a rally point for people who are taking a stand against what's going on. But I don't know enough about it to really delve into it. I know we're seeing the militarization of police on full display there, which I don't think is a bad thing. But from some of the footage I'm seeing, it's being presented in a pretty bad light. So I do want to dive into that, and hopefully we'll be able to maybe get somebody in here who can really kind of break it down for us.
Yeah, because, unfortunately, I think that the current sitting president, the exiting president, like he hasn't even said anything about it, and not for my comfort.
And that's I'm wondering about that, because as the lame duck president in your last 60 days in office, and in his last 45 days in office, do you start a course of action that your successor now has to continue or has to correct? Because remember the mess that Barack Obama inherited, and him having to drive the bus back out of the ditch, et cetera. So is he falling back to say, hey, I'm not going to start this up because I'm out of here in a couple of weeks? But you still got to do something. You're still the president right now.
Yeah, you need to address this crisis. Plus, also, I just one of my Facebook friends posted a video of one of the demonstrators, and he had been photographed with Barack Obama. Barack Obama had gone to Standing Rock at some point. Yeah, and he said, we want you to keep the promises that you made.
Wow,
and
you can do that right now with no. No repercussions in terms of worrying about any political whatever, because you're on your way out the door.
Yeah.
But again, do I make these decisions that I don't have to suffer the consequences? But in the meantime, you can't let people suffer either. No.
And the other thing, too, is when you look back at the civil rights movement and things like that, when the National Guard needs to be called out to protect the people. Right. To make sure little black kids could get an education.
Sure.
So it's the right thing to do.
That's not what's happening now, though. They're not going to send the National Guard out there and that's it. See, here's the thing, too. We're talking big oil, right?
Yeah, self-sufficiency too. We're talking about this supply that's in our own.
It's our own resources. Yeah.
Yeah.
So and that one again, we're going to have to really get that's going to be a whole show. That's 90 minutes right there, without talking about mustard and sodas and stuff. That's That's like a full-on 90-minute deal there.
Yeah.
Hey, 323-293-3375. I'm gonna touch on adulteration of food a little bit more, and then we'll move on. So a lot of cops I work with had been deputy sheriffs in LA County Jail, and they decided, hey, for whatever reason, they're going to lateral out and go be a street cop someplace. And they had horror stories because in the jail, at least in LA County Jail, the inmates cook the food. And there's a staff kitchen where the deputies eat, but there's no deputies cooking that food. And the county doesn't hire cooks to come in. They use inmates to cook the food. And so, there's all kind of horror stories about people getting sick, people getting legitimately sick. Beside all the crap, breathing in all that crap in the jail all the time, beside the fact that you're in there with the inmates and touching stuff that they've touched and all that other stuff, you got people who've come off the street who've been homeless for months, who do something to go to jail, and now they're in there with all their, their cooties or whatever you want to call it, A jail is like a petri dish. And so now you have a kitchen in that petri dish, and they're cooking for the deputies. Now I understand that some of the food could be quite good because you know, I was up there training one day and the guy's like, "Hey man, you guys gonna eat with we're having ribs?" I'm like, Nah, I'm not eating the jail ribs, man. You know, not made by the inmates. I'm not having the jail ribs. And that's the thing. It's a staff kitchen. So it's not that they would care about harming the general inmate population anyway, but that guy who's cooking that food knows cops are going to eat it. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So you don't even have to say it's for a cop because it's all for a cop. Mm-hmm. You know? And guys told me, said, yeah, man, I know that you name it, I've probably ingested it because, you know, I worked for 8 years in the county jail. And I ate my meals there because that's a perk of the job. Mm-hmm. You go have your meal break. You're not spending any money. Mm-hmm. The county provides the meals for you because you can't leave the jail to go down the street to Burger King. Uh-huh. You have to be there, so they provide you food. And a lot of deputies, man, they bring their food. They bring their lunch. Mm-hmm. You know, and they're like, it's a better way to control their diet all the way around for nutritional purposes and health purposes and everything else. So, but when you get out in the street, you would hope that wouldn't happen. But I remember. Brand new police officer. I was riding with a guy who'd come from an Orange County agency, and he told me about a sting operation he was involved in, where they had a guy at Del Taco, and this is no cops involved. There was a guy at Del Taco who had taken to having intercourse with the beans. Damn, did I say the name of the restaurant? Last time I didn't say the name of the restaurant. I just said it wasn't Taco Bell.
No, you didn't say the name of the restaurant.
I didn't?
No.
I think I did. Okay.
No, I don't think so.
Well, I think I did, but it wasn't Taco Bell.
Okay.
Anyway, that guy apparently liked the texture of the beans, the fact that they were warm and that they were stiff. And, you know, I guess he was a lonely fella. And so but the problem is he wouldn't throw the beans away. He'd put the beans back in rotation.
Oh, my God.
And so somebody saw him do it or suspected he was doing it or whatever, and they set up a sting operation. And they literally caught him with his pants down in the back of the restaurant, going at it with the beans.
Oh, disgusting.
Yeah. But I mean, how long did that guy do that before somebody said something? You know? So adulteration of food is real. And that was for everybody. That wasn't just for cops. So if you laugh because the guy got mustard in his soda, if you had a refried bean burrito, tell him what you got.
I know.
Shit.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Disgusting.
Tell me about it. So, we had an incident that happened this is literally right across the street from where my sister used to live, like 83rd and 84th and Western, okay? There was a road rage incident, and it went viral. I saw the video a couple of days ago when it first came out. I don't know if you saw that, the demolition derby in the parking lot. So there's a laundromat there, and some ladies end up pulling into the laundromat. I guess somebody cut somebody off, road rage. They pull into the laundromat parking lot, and a fist fight ensues. And one of the victim who's getting stomped out in this fist fight, she's getting kicked and hit and everything, she gets in her car, and now, like this kid at OSU, she's behind the wheel of a weapon. And she realizes it, and she starts tearing stuff up. Now, she says she was just trying to get away. Okay? But you guys be the judge. We have that video ready to roll there? Check this out.
It's the demolition derby that's got America gasping. Sheer mayhem as two cars collide again and again in a Los Angeles parking lot. Now, one of the drivers, the woman who hit that fire hydrant as she pulled away, is telling Inside Edition her side of the story. Did you fear for your life?
I did. Every single moment.
The mind-boggling clash was triggered when the two women got into a dispute as they were driving on the street. Both vehicles pulled into a parking lot, and that's when chaos erupted.
They grabbed me out of the car and yanked me to the ground.
Yahya Shabazz says she found herself in a dangerous situation, getting pummeled.
You can see I've just got my arms up. There was nothing I could do.
She says she was afraid someone would hit her with a hammer. Shabazz says she tried to flee, but it didn't go as planned.
People were surrounding my car, and I just started driving. I kind of blanked out, and I just started driving. I just wanted people away from me.
The demolition derby goes on. And on.
It seemed like they were trying to keep me in the parking lot, and I was just trying to get out. It was just insane. I just drove and I hit the fire hydrant.
Shabazz took me to the body shop to see what her $26,000 car looks like today.
The whole rear of your car is completely shattered.
Yeah. Get this, it's a rental.
It looks as if the two of you are going at each other. Right, playing bumper cars. We're playing
not.
some sort of... Not at all. That's not the case at all.
And, it begs the question, why not just leave?
Right.
Why not drive off?
Right. You'll see her back up, and every time I move, she moves. Every time I come around, she come around. And I just freaked, I panicked, and I just started driving.
Well, the other driver claims Shabazz was the aggressor and says she never thought she'd end up that close to being killed. Police are still investigating. So far, no charges have been filed.
All right. So, a couple things with that. I watched the raw video, and there's actually two videos that were put together when this first came out, because you saw the long view of the lady hitting the fire hydrant. Well, the initial view was actually in the parking lot. Mm-hmm. So apparently there were two people with camera phones, and literally, my sister used to live in that building where they're taking that video from. It's probably her old apartment, actually looking at the view, and it to me seemed that this wasn't just you trying to get away, because they beat her. If you look at the video, it looks like she urinated on herself, but they literally beat the piss out of her. I mean, like, seriously. So quite naturally, she's not happy about that. And this whole thing started as road rage in the first place. The fact that there was a road rage incident and you ended up out of the car means maybe you were ready to fight, right? Because why would you get out of the car in this day and age in a road rage incident? Yeah. So that didn't go her way, because there were two other women two women in the other car. And they jumped on her, like I said, beat her pretty bad. She got in her car and started tearing stuff up, and ripped the door off the other car. And man, that's crazy. Now here's the thing. That being a rental car is another reason she probably felt a little more free to be destructive like that. Oh.
Actually, I kind of believe her.
Really?
I do. I think that I don't know. I think that, I don't know that I would be able to put two thoughts together to, I think you could be disoriented. I could think if you've been hit in the head enough times, I think, if you're hit in this temporal region, like this is the thinnest part of on your skull here. So
sure.
I think that, I think that she may have had a hard time getting out of the parking lot. Why she got out of the car, I don't know.
In the first
why
place,
you would do that. But
after she got her bell rung,
the other thing too is, she's lucky she got back in her car. What if she wasn't able to get back in her car? And there's 2-on-1. It's just not fair.
Oh no.
So no.
But you know what? So this is why, and Gil and I spoke about this. We should more regularly have non-police personnel as a true ride-along, because what you just said is something that would not cross my mind, because police officers, we're taught to fight through that, right? And you got to keep your wits about you, and you got to do what you got to do. And there's none of this, hey, I was disoriented, so I start tearing stuff up. That doesn't fly. But to the layperson, that is a perfectly reasonable response. It really is. Because she's not trained to do anything other than, she's not trained to respond to that. She maybe hasn't ever been hit in the face before. When I went to the police academy, they made sure we all had to box each other several times, because they wanted to make sure the first time you got hit in the face wasn't in the street.
Yeah.
So that's a good point. I hadn't thought about that.
I feel bad. Actually, I feel bad for her. And she's so there's no gaps in her story. Not when she was telling that story. There's no.
Well, but you were only hearing one side too. But here's the other thing. Let's speak to motive here.
Well, I think, but it doesn't. For me, it doesn't even. Obviously, that the other person is going to come out and say that she was the aggressor.
She's going to tell a compelling story too, right?
There were two. There were two people in that other car on this one person.
They jumped on
that
her.
Other person could have said, "Why are you so angry about this?" If you're just.
Let me repeat. This is 83rd and Western. There's not a whole lot of dialogue go down when it come time for But it's not even. It's when not it goes
even,
down.
It's not even 83rd and Western. I was at the Gelsons in Tarzana, and I saw a woman in this high-end BMW, white woman, who looked like she was probably in her 40s, tell a young girl who was it had to be in her early 20s. She was driving the girl was driving like a small Mercedes or a BMW. This is in Tarzana.
This is Gelson's, right?
Yeah.
I'm with you.
The young girl
Gelson's
is walking,
with $5 gallons of milk.
In this expensive, the big BMW, rolls down her window and says, when you get out, I'm going to kick your ass. And the girl was like...
You can say the whole word. Oh, so your sons are watching.
So then I was waiting because me and the security guard, I was going to walk out to the parking lot, but I saw this thing transpire.
Yeah.
So when she got close to me, I said, what did she say to you? And the girl was shaking.
Sure.
She's like, I don't even know what I did to that woman. I don't even know who that woman is. And she's threatening me. And she asked the security guard, I'm going to run in and get lunch. Will you walk me to my car? And I was like, what is wrong with people? Like,
right.
What is the slight? What is whatever she did, which I was standing out there, I didn't see anything. All of a sudden, I'd hear people are yelling and things like that. And you can innocently and you can be like unwittingly, you can cut somebody off.
Right, and trigger something. I've done that before.
But it doesn't mean that you did it maliciously. It's unwittingly.
Sure.
So, I mean, like, why is everyone flying off the handle? It's friggin' Gelson's, right? Like, what is the urgency? You're at a market. This isn't a hospital emergency room. This is a market parking lot. Like, why are you and why would you threaten someone in their 20s? Like threaten you're going to kick her?
Because she knows that because she knows it's not 83rd and Western.
Oh, my gosh.
And there's not going to be somebody jumping on her two at a time.
I don't know.
That's why she felt comfortable saying that. Because do you think she would have said that to those two girls at 83rd and Western? That she was going to kick their ass? I'm sure Mason can spell, by the way.
Yeah, he can.
But she wouldn't have said that, you know. So it's all up. She knew her audience. But, you know, that was a situation where, here's what I mean by motive. Her motivation to tell this side of the story is twofold. She's looking at two big bills here. One is from the rental car company.
Well, hopefully she got
the whole comprehensive.
On it. Mm-hmm.
Hopefully she got comprehensive, right? That covers everything. They're still going to blacklist her from getting another car from them, by the way. But maybe the insurance should cover it. And she's also looking at getting a big bill from the city of Los Angeles for sharing that fire hydrant off. So that's something else to be considered. So this is maybe why she wants to get her story out there, present her side of the story. Because would you, after being involved in something like that, would you really go on TV and talk about it? You know, because nobody really knew who she was.
I don't know.
I wouldn't. You know, I wouldn't, but unless I had those big bills.
Plus Inside Edition. Like, how many people watch Inside Edition? I don't even watch Inside Edition.
Well, again, nobody knew who she was first, so, you know, but now. But, you know, I just thought that was interesting. But, you know, road rage is no joke because that could have gone a lot worse. That could have ended up with somebody getting hurt
Valley,
really bad.
When we lived in Simi Valley, I was driving the kids to school one day, and there was a car in front of me, and the license plate frame said, "Keep honking because I'm reloading."
Oh, I've seen that before.
And I was like,
that's pretty antisocial, isn't it?
What the heck kind of thing is that? Like,
right.
I mean, you know, so you're so like, even if you don't have a firearm with you in the car, any little thing you get honked at because maybe it's legitimate. Maybe you're sitting on a green light or whatever. Like, you get honked at. You're going to fly into a rage over that?
People are aggressive. People are real aggro. You know, but you're from LA, so you remember when we had these road rage incidents out here in the 80s where people were shooting car to car.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's about the time people start making those jokes or whatever. But, you know, that's really nothing to joke with.
During that time, well, I don't know, but the children seem to be like, if there was people had children in the car, like you wouldn't go after them. Now these days, though, in incidents of road rage, actually people are hitting people's cars and they have their kids in the backseat. You know?
Sure, they don't care. Oh no, they don't care.
It's ridiculous.
So I'm in the police academy. This is 1988. Going a ride along with a potential agency, Baldwin Park PD. I'm on a ride along, and because that was one of the things you did in the academy is you go on a ride along, right? So I go with Baldwin Park, and we end up arresting a guy, a young Asian kid who's got to be 50 years old now, but a young Asian kid who got in a fight with his girlfriend. She drives off with their kid in the car. He jumps in his car, chases her down, and tries to run them off the road.
Wow.
With his kid in the car.
Mm-hmm.
Because he was infuriated.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So she gives up his info or whatever. We go locate Junior, put the habeas corpus on him, take him into custody, take him down to jail. Yeah, habeas corpus is a legal term, habeas corpus. And we're booking him, and he starts shaking, he starts crying. And because he was slightly built, and he wasn't no Bruce Lee, and he was going to LA County Jail. Okay, so so anyway, he was he was quite intimidated by the whole process. And I'll never forget, the officer looked at him during the middle of a booking process, and he said to him, "You see that fear that you feel right now? That's what she felt when you were trying to run her and your kid off the road with your car because you got upset.
Mm-hmm.
And now you're being booked for a felony.
Mm-hmm.
That's assault with a deadly weapon.
Yeah.
Even if she's in another car,
Mm-hmm.
you know, it's still assault with a deadly weapon. Which is, I'm really surprised that they didn't try to do that here, but I guess because they're in a parking lot, it's slow speeds. So nobody's really going to, you know,
Mm-hmm.
there's not much risk that someone will be killed or receive great bodily injury. But this is on a highway. He ran him off the road, okay? So, you know, and the guy didn't even deny that he had done it. So it wasn't even like, why am I here? He knew why he was there. He just couldn't believe that he was getting a felony and he was getting ready to go to jail. All because he got upset and couldn't control himself.
Right, exactly. So this is one of the things that I talk to the kids about all the time because, you know, like Mason will say, oh, you should honk, or oh, you should do this. And I'm like, listen, there are real-time consequences. And by the way, honking at somebody, flipping somebody off, yelling obscenities at them, if you're going to do that kind of thing, you better be ready for the consequence because if they come after you, then it's game over, you know. So, you know, I am always telling Mason and Riley, we got to get our emotions under control. You know, you can't just be all, you know.
Well, you know what, and that's
just because something doesn't go your way or just because you get mad doesn't mean you know.
But I think driving is something that amplifies people's feelings about that kind of thing.
Although I did, when I used to commute to Cal State LA, I had the worst road rage. I was so angry at people. I'm like, why are you getting on the freeway and you have a piece of junk car? Like, why is that happening? And now you've stopped. Now you're stuck in like the number 3 lane and you've backed us up all the way to the 118. This is not cool. Like, I'd be so angry.
And the person, their only sin is they got a raggedy car. They're not even driving improperly. They just have a raggedy car.
That's why I have road rage over that. Yeah.
Well, you know what? Just a couple of days ago, a friend of mine was a very mild-mannered person, a very calm and centered person usually, was telling me about this road rage incident they had because on the way to work, people just kept cutting them off, and just, you know, like flying off the handle and then like really out of character, you know.
So were they really cutting him off? Because my husband always says he gets mad at drivers too, and he's like, that person, and I'm like, why are you mad all of a sudden? And he's like, that person cut me off. I'm like, when did they cut you off? Because I'm sitting in the front seat and I'm like, he did not cut you off. If you have at least half a car distance between you and they get in front of you, that's not cutting you off.
See, and you think that, which is why you do that to people, which is why people are honking at you. See? So, because you think that's cool, that half a car length cut off business.
No, but I'm just saying, like, if they do that, I mean, I don't think I do that to other people, but I mean, like, if you do that, if someone does it to you, I don't think that's cutting you off. Cutting you off is when you like have to break abruptly and, you know, to accommodate them. So.
Right. Well, okay, yeah, sure. And you know what? And if anybody should be flying off the handle, it should be me, because I've had my car hit from the back twice. Mm-hmm. This year. Mm-hmm. Okay, I got the car in December of last year, brand new nice car. I get rear-ended. That wasn't that much damage, and I wasn't without my car for that long. But that was an annoyance. Mm-hmm. I was actually on my way here to do the show, and it wasn't much visible damage, so I just came on to the show, pulled over, got exchange information, came on and did the show. Take it to the body shop, and they're like, "Oh no, there's all kind of stuff because that car's got sensors and bumpers and radar, cameras and radar in the bumper."
Yeah.
So they had to replace all kind of crap. I didn't have to pay for it, and they got me a really cool rental car, so I was good. Well, then in September, somebody smacks in the back of that car, same thing, except a whole lot of damage, trunk lid damage, and da-da-da-da. And I'm sitting there, and my finger is like swelling up with blood coming at the end, because I hit my finger inside the car when I got hit, and I'm just like, you know what? It was weird. It was almost scary how just an eerie calm descended over me. You know that icy feeling you get when you're like really pissed off? And I'm like, why? End up being, I was out without my car for like 2 months. It was like $25,000 worth of damage. And, you know, but I was really surprised that I wasn't like going off. Mm-hmm. But I think it was just so much anger that it just chilled me right on out.
Oh.
You know?
Well, at least anger has the opposite effect on you that it has on other people.
Well, you know, it was just enough. And so now I can't keep that. Obviously, the car is bad juju, so I got to get rid of the car. You know what I mean? I'll get rid of it next month, I guess, whatever. But, you know, That road rage, though, is serious business. People get killed behind road rage. People jump out of cars and they're mad and they're all pumped up because they're mad, and they get out of the car and they see they're looking at somebody. We had a homicide one night. There's a place we used to go eat right outside Watts called Lucy's. Lucy's in Southgate at Century and Century and Long Beach. MLK and Long Beach. And right around the corner is the city of Southgate. And so there's a residential area over there. We had a guy, same thing, guy stopped at a light, guy's honking at him, and I guess the guy flipped him off. Guy gets out, big old yoked out black dude, runs up on the passenger compartment, it's like beating on the guy's window. The guy pulls out a .45, shoots him in the head and kills him right there.
Oh, gosh.
Just dropped him dead right there, DRT, as we say. And that was as a result of road rage. Not that the guy had a right to kill him, but had you stayed in the car,
Yeah.
this would not have happened.
Yeah.
So, road rage is a serious thing. So I made a post tonight. It says, as Gil Contreras, my usual partner in anti-crime, is out tonight, my guest host ride along will be none other than listener favorite, Trish Nasingham. And I said, well, we'll be discussing. And then the lovely Seymour, you are funny, says, look at God, let me tune in. Trish is very intelligent and in tune.
Oh,
so
thank you.
Yeah. So look at God, you're funny. So anyway, look at God. She's like praising God. And you're praising God because Trish is here, not because Gil is sick, right?
Okay.
Okay. Anyway, that's funny. So I think it's actually time for our next break. Is it time for a break? Yeah, it is, according to our producer. Usually the producer holds up a sign, but I was watching the clock this time. And she's like, hey, you guys just talking, so whatever. So we're going to go to a break. We're going to come back, and we'll jump into our last segment here. We'll see you guys in a bit. All right. So we're back here, and that's Outlaw by War. And, if you grew up in L.A. like we did, War was like truly part of the soundscape, as poets like to say. I can say soundtrack. She said soundscape of your life growing up because, that was what was happening. Mm-hmm. War was what you heard every place, from Summer to Lowrider to Cisco Kid. Mm-hmm. And I had older siblings, so that's what they were blasting all the time was War. I really like that song. I'm not into motorcycles, but I did like that song. So anyway, that was Outlaw. I thought that was appropriate for a cop show. So anyway. Well, we were talking about, Seymour being funny. All right. So, one of the things that we covered a couple of weeks ago was I guess a couple of months ago now, was the Keith Lamont Scott shooting in Charlotte, North Carolina. I keep wanting to call it Charleston, South Carolina. I'm actually going there tonight, too, and I don't know. I guess I better not get on the wrong plane.
I know.
Because I keep getting
confused. End up in the right city.
Yeah. But, in Charlotte, North Carolina. And so the situation was that Charlotte PD was coming to serve a search warrant at the location, and Mr. Scott was outside of that location. It was an apartment building, apparently, or some residence. He was sitting in his car outside that residence, and one of the officers came across him as they were approaching the residence. Because you want to check and make sure there's not people in the cars or whatever going to tip you off or try to attack you while you're trying to make entry to the location or whatever.
In the process.
Yeah, or whatever, and make sure they're not bystanders, right? Who might get caught up. So the story was that Mr. Keith Lamont Scott produced a handgun, and the officer shot him and killed him. And so this was a big thing because the people were saying, hey, he didn't have a gun. He wouldn't have had a gun. He had a book in his hand, et cetera, et cetera. And they were actually, he expired on the scene. And there was actually he didn't expire on the scene. He was transported but died at the hospital apparently. But there was like riots in Charlotte for several nights after that. Mm-hmm. And people were tearing up Charlotte because they were, and let me make this clear to people. Usually when you see something like that happen in the community, it's not because it's that one person. It's just too much, right? It's the last straw, as they say.
Yeah.
And so even when we had the civil unrest here in '92, people called the Rodney King riots. And I tell people, I was a cop back then. It wasn't about Rodney King. He wasn't Martin Luther King. He was Rodney King. It wasn't, nobody's going to riot about Rodney King, but it was about Latasha Harlins, who had been killed by a Korean shop owner about a year prior to this, and that person got probation, no jail time. It was about the Eula Love shooting. It was about all the things that had been happening where it built up to this critical mass and enough was enough. So with all these shootings that have been going on lately, it's not necessarily because of Alton Sterling. It's not because of Keith Lamont Scott. It's not because of Walter Scott. It's because of the collective multitude of these things that have piled up to where people say enough's enough. Now, should you be rioting? No, you shouldn't riot. You know, you shouldn't destroy property, etc. But I mean, this is what happened in Charlotte. So we've got a call. Hey, caller, what's your name? Where you calling from?
Yes, Mr. George Holt. This is your man,
Willie
Sweet Wonka Joe.
Yeah, Trish caught the voice already.
Yeah, Willie Sweet.
How's it going, man?
Yes.
How you doing?
All right.
How was your Thanksgiving?
Oh, come on, George. Why you keep? George, you already know I do not follow the principles of the American establishment, man.
Well, like as Ice-T once said, sit up like some fool and eat turkey. That's the day your forefathers jerked me, right? So you don't follow
George,
that. Okay.
George, I pull the turkeys out whenever I feel like it, man. I don't do it when they tell me to do it. You know what I'm saying? George, do me a favor.
Go ahead.
George, do me a favor. When you get done and you go home and you get your, what you like, the Jack with the Coke, right?
Jack and Coke, that's right.
Pull your phone out and Google how much money did Purdue make off of turkeys for 2016 after November the 20, whatever it was. Okay.
Oh, I bet you. Yeah, I can imagine.
You already know I'm against the establishment, George. Don't ask me no question like that. Anyway.
Okay, what's up?
All right, George. I'm sorry. Who was the young lady sitting next to you?
This is Trish. Trish Navarrete Singham. Common spelling.
Okay, it's Trish. Are you a prosecutor or what?
No. I'm Gil's sister, but I'm also I'm just a concerned citizen. But I'm in a teaching program at USC.
And she has got a very unique perspective. So she is a true ride-along because we, sometimes we don't always have police officers on, right? We have people who are citizens, and she's a true ride-along.
Yeah.
Okay, I was just tuning in at the last minute. I didn't know y'all be doing like an hour and a half show.
Yeah, that's what we do.
Yeah. So I mean, but one of the things we should keep in mind is that education can definitely be an instrument of justice, and that's what I'm hoping to do in my own practice.
Oh my God!
Education can be an instrument of justice. I like that.
So basically, like, you're like the Joker and Gil is like Batman.
Wow.
I'm more like Kryptonite.
You're his arch enemy.
Right. Well, you know what? And so speaking of Thanksgiving, I'm sure there were some interesting conversations at the Contreras household.
Over
Thanksgiving dinner.
We're laughing so hard. Yeah.
Yeah, I bet.
Radical rules for liberals at Thanksgiving was hilarious.
Exactly.
So George.
Yes, sir.
George, I have a question, man.
Okay.
So when are you going to come through with the show based upon does the law enforcement agency, is the law enforcement agency the protectors of the elite rich class? Are you going to do that show?
I remember you asked that. I think that was the first time you called and you asked that, right?
Yeah.
I'm
waiting on it, George.
Well, you know what, man? That is first of all, I think you already know the answer. Okay. I think you have your answer already is what I mean. I don't mean that you know the answer
okay.
But I think you have your answer that you're going to accept.
Hey, George. Right? Hey, George.
Yes,
I'm winking with my left eye right now, and you wink back at me. Okay, I get it. I know you got police buddies. I know you got to protect yourself. So I get it.
No, you know what? Here's what you got to remember. And I said this before. The people you said, the ruling class, the wealthy elite, they have an inordinate amount of influence in which laws are promulgated, right?
Right.
The police then enforce those laws. So you could probably argue that by extension, I'll give you a perfect example. You ready for this one? When I first became a police officer, we pull people over and we would say license, registration, and what was the third thing we'd ask for, Trish? Proof of?
Insurance.
Proof of insurance. Okay?
Proof of insurance, yeah.
Now, you don't think the insurance companies were behind that?
Well,
they were. And let me tell you what happened.
I think all things lead to money, George. You already know.
That's right. So you follow the money, right? So here's what happened.
Yeah.
Here's what happened. So after a while, people complained about that and said, why do I have to carry my proof of insurance? It's not like you're going to process my claim right here in the street anyway. So after that, they changed that law to say that license, registration, and you just had to know your insurance information. So if you can memorize your insurance policy number, you could carry it in your head and give it to the officer so they could write it down. You did not have to have that little piece of paper issued to you by the insurance company.
To keep insurance.
You have to have insurance, but you didn't have to have that piece of paper from the insurance company. You just had to have. So it was less of kind of enforcing their own commercial interest.
Well, I'm gonna tell you like this. Hey, George, when the police pulled me over, and the first thing I'm trying to do is cover up the kush smoke in my car right now. Like,
what state are you in? What state are you in?
I'm in Georgia, man.
Oh, okay. Well, you can't get away with it there because here in California, I don't think it's going to be an issue anymore after January.
Hey, George, the police pulled me over. They see Febreze bottles and some candles in my car. They were like, "Yo, what the fuck are you selling smell good products and shit?" I'm like, "Nah, I'm just trying not to get caught." That's what I'm trying to do.
Well, you better watch that down there, man. They don't play down there. So look, man.
Listen, George. Listen, I know you got to go. Let me ask you a question though.
Okay.
To you, because I've been meaning to ask you this for a minute. I wanted to know, George, from you, and I'll take my answer, off the phone. But I wanted to know from you, George, how do you feel about the new wave of technology that is coming in, where police can, scan this, and they got all this technology to basically tell if you've been smoking weed in your car. How do you feel about all the technology that's coming in with police now? Just like, because I seen police not walking, but driving through a Walmart parking lot, just scanning people's license plates to see if they got insurance or warrants or whatever.
Yeah,
how do you feel about the new wave? Yeah, talk to me about the new wave of technology, and are we going into a police state of like the eye is always watching now? You know what I'm saying? And I thank you for taking my call, George. I'll holler at you later.
Hey, thanks for the
shout
call.
Out to you, girl.
Thanks for the continued support. All right.
So wait,
go ahead.
Law enforcement agencies can go into a parking lot, a random parking lot, and just start scanning people's the license plates on cars.
Okay, so here's the deal. Some of you may see these police cars that have these little bulbous looking things on the top, on the light bar. That is an automated license plate reader. Okay.
Oh.
And they are putting those. They were talking about putting them into airports at one point. And what it does is it scans the license plates on vehicles. You know, those little rectangular tracking things you see on videos where they're like tracking people's faces, facial recognition. It does that for license plates. So it'll capture that license plate and it runs it, okay? And they're looking for stolen cars, they're looking for wanted vehicles, et cetera. I've never heard of anybody doing that in a parking lot because the idea is if you're out on a public highway, there's no reasonable expectation of privacy. That license plate number is there to be seen. Back in the day, it used to be you had to have a reason for running somebody's license plate. When I first came on the job, you couldn't just randomly run somebody's plate unless they'd committed a vehicle code violation, and then you were going to make the decision on whether you're going to pull them over or not. Now, though, they changed that and said there's no reasonable expectation. That's why their license plate must be displayed, and it's not like the general public has access to the information. Only law enforcement does. So, with the advent of this automated license plate reader technology, now you don't even have to. You can just park a module or a police car with that on top of it, and go on about your business, and that thing is tracking all those license plates that go around there. And if it gets a hit, stolen car or whatever, or wanted person, then it's going to let somebody know, and then you go do that. Again, I've never seen it being used in a parking lot like a Walmart because I don't know that that's allowed.
Yeah.
You know, it would seem like that may be not, that you may have some expectation of privacy on private property. You know?
Yeah.
But again, hey, it doesn't mean, all that means is if you get caught that way, all it means is they're going to suppress that. It doesn't mean it's not going to happen because you have officers who knowingly and unknowingly will violate laws, rules, policies because they don't know the law, or they're overzealous, or they just don't care. But usually it's because they don't know. It's a lot of it's ignorance. To answer the other questions about technology, technology is a great thing for police officers if you use it properly. And if you do not allow it to make you lose your hard skills. Here's what I mean by that. When I first came on the job, a police officer had to know their geographical area. Firefighters also had to know the geographical area. And the reason is if something happened, if you got ambushed or something happened right in front of you and you had to jump out and deal with it, you needed to be able to tell dispatch where you were. You ain't got time to be looking around for street signs. What is that? Is that is that 103rd on 103rd? Is that Croesus? Is that Grape Street? You don't have time for that. You're supposed to always know where you are. Mm-hmm. And you're supposed to know geography, because if I need help, you need to be able to get to me quickly. You need to know the best routes to get to me. Mm-hmm. Okay. Again, the fire department was the same way, because, it's all about fire department getting someplace quickly.
Yeah.
Right? So the fire department, like police officers, had to learn. Now fire trucks have these big GPS panels in them. Police cars have it too. Mm-hmm. But most of that GPS is for tracking where the police car is. But for fire department, it's going to show them allegedly the quickest route to get there. Mm-hmm. But it makes me worry that now you're not developing those other skills. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And if something happens, and see, anything, I was taught long ago to never rely on something that runs on a battery. You know what I mean? Not for your life, because stuff fails, technology fails. So just like people in the military, back in the day, you had to learn how to use a lensatic compass, which was a straight up magnetic north compass, and you shot azimuths on it and everything else. Now they got the GPS units, but that thing's got batteries, or it's solar powered. It can fail because it's technology. Mm-hmm. And can you go
or
back?
Cell tower goes down.
Yeah, right. Or cell tower goes down.
Satellite doesn't work.
Right. Then what do you do?
Yeah.
There's too many variables there.
Yeah.
So I'm all for technology as long as it doesn't make you lose your dogfighting skills, for lack of a better term. Those hard skills that you need, those fundamentals that you need. I'm all for that. Just like lasers on pistols. Lasers are cool. Lasers are a great tool, but you should still know how to use your iron sights in case that battery in that laser goes dead, right? Same thing. And we've seen this over and over again with officers who maybe have become too reliant. That taser is cool, but I've seen people get tased and it doesn't impact them like we think it's going to, because either the taser, both darts didn't make proper contact with the person's wearing thick and bulky clothing, or some people are just less susceptible to it. There's nobody who's taser proof, but some people are just going to be less susceptible to it. Mm-hmm. Maybe your batteries in your taser, aren't where they should be. Although tasers are supposed to stop working when the batteries get so low that it's ineffective. It's supposed to stop working. But still, you still got to be, if that don't work, man, you got to still knuckle up. You got to be able to knuckle up and come from the shoulders. You got to come from the shoulders. That's just one of those fundamental skills of a street cop. So technology is great as long as it doesn't allow you to get soft, and as long as it doesn't get abused. Because, there's no way any police officer could sit there with a hot sheet and a clipboard back in 1979 and check every license plate that's going by against a hot sheet. A computer can do it. This phone could do that. This phone has a processing speed and the memory to be able to do that just off this phone. Mm-hmm. So now they can do it. So now, is it easier to violate people's rights?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He was talking about the weed smell in the car and the detection of weed and whatever. When I was in the canine unit, they were talking about this machine that they had that was supposed to have a more sensitive nose than a dog, and that it could pick up narcotics and even bomb scents from farther away than a dog could, and that you didn't have to worry about it getting sick. You didn't have to worry about it crapping all over the place. You didn't have to worry about it biting anybody. It didn't need to be fed and kenneled at night and all the rest of that stuff. Of course, it was ridiculously expensive, but there were also some things that it didn't do that a dog could do. So, your traditional dog handlers weren't interested in it because they just looked at it like, yeah, but, my dog, the presence of my dog, people see me with my dog and they know. So if a guy's going to come bring a bomb into the airport and he sees me with my dog, that's a deterrent.
Yeah.
Where some guy's got some machine on his shoulder, who knows? Is he going to? So technology is cool, but can't let it make you soft. Just like anything else, right?
Yeah.
Hey, here's a question, and we have ladies here, and I was talking to somebody on the way over here, and they talk about people going to jail, and do they will ladies, will they wait for their man if he goes to jail? And I thought, that'd be an interesting thing to bring up. So you can leave your comment in the YouTube section down here. But ladies, could you wait for your man while he does time? And does it matter what he did time for? Does it matter how long he's going to be gone for? And with what goes on in prison, while you're waiting for him, is he waiting for you? And the discussion we had was, nowadays, I think for me, looking at it, of course, I mean, that's not whatever. That's not part of my life, but just having dealt with so many people over the years where this is a reality for them. You know, I think the question is, did she know? Right. So like I had friends who've gone to guys I grew up with who went to prison, and they were involved in illegal things, and their girlfriends / wives / baby mamas knew that they were involved in these illegal things, and they were reaping the rewards, knowingly reaping the rewards of these illegal things that these guys were doing.
Yeah, I mean, people go to jail or prison for those kinds of reasons. And I mean, like a history of criminal behavior, but then sometimes there is, an accident that happens and someone ends up dead. And so
like a drunk driving kind of thing.
Yes, something like that. And so I think it just depends on the strength of the people who are involved, the couple, and whether or not that person's going to wait for them. I think,
Does it matter how long?
Well, that's for the individual. I'm not into telling people how they should live. Like, I'm just like, when I was in my 20s and 30s.
Are you sure you're Contreras?
I know.
Are you
when
sure
I was in
you're
my 20s and
Contreras?
30s, I used to be like, there was an objective right and objective wrong. And to some degree, I think those things still exist, but I don't.
I try to explain it to people.
What?
I try to tell people that. People tell me the same thing and say, man, when you were a young cop, man, you were a lot different than you are now. You met me when I was 23 years old. I'm now 51 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? That was a long time ago.
Yeah.
And if I was the same guy at 51 than I was at 23.
I mean, I think that we have a responsibility to continue to evolve. Like this idea that, I said this at this time, or I felt this way at this time, or this was my personal philosophy at this time, you should not be stagnant. Or,
you shouldn't be held to that forever.
We're constantly evolving. I mean, we don't stop evolving until we take our last breath. And so at this point in my life, I'm not interested in telling people what they should or should not do. And I think in that case, it's just up to the individual couple, to deal with the trauma of the incident and the aftermath and all of the ways in which, even after the jail time is served, that is just always going to play into the psyche of all the people that are involved. So,
and not just psyche, opportunities and everything else. I mean, a lot changes.
Right, but I mean, like even if there's children involved, there's they have to carry that burden also. So there's all these unintended consequences. So I'm not interested in telling people what to do. I think it's up to them, to individual. I do think, though, that we need to, in terms of like criminal justice reform and social justice reform and restorative justice, I think that we really need to look at the person as an individual, and that person, each person coming out of the prison system needs to be looked at as an individual and should be allowed an opportunity to rebuild their lives for the better of themselves, for the better for their families, for their community at large. Like, we could do that one small thing, and then there's like this outward effect that, that has this lasting sort of this goodness, this positiveness that can come that can come as a result of that. So they need
instead
to
of this whole cycle of recidivism.
Not just recidivism, but just like so you've done time, and now you've paid your time. You paid for your life in time, because you committed a crime.
You paid your debt to society.
And maybe there was a dead person, so they did that. And so now they're out. Yeah. But what happens, so now you have to pay restitution for the rest of your life.
Right.
So how are you going to pay restitution if you can't get a job? How are you going to? So we as a society, we need to start creating these opportunities for people to rebuild their lives. And I think this is one area, this is just one area where I think education could really step in and change things. We could do something. People
hear about people all the time, while they're in prison, they get their GED. While they're in prison, they take college classes. The opportunity is there, right? I mean, as far as I know, everybody's got access to education while they're in there. Now, whether they see the value of it,
but it's not like, though, it's not like, oh, well, I want to go to college, so I'm just going to do this. Like, there are schools that have agreements with the prisons, and then they have to. Not all classes are available every term, so
sure.
it's not. as everything within that institution, everything is hard. So, it's not easy. So people.
No, that's part of punishment too, though, because that's what a lot of this is about, is punishment. A lot of this is about retribution. We are a society that seeks vengeance. We love vengeance, So that's part of it. The retribution of prison being hard, the retribution of you maybe losing those connections with loved ones on the outside, and everything else that goes on in prison. I mean, there's some people who feel like prison should be as hard as you can make it to discourage people from going back.
But when you think of like all the factors that go into why a person ended up there, there's no amount of discouragement that's not going to discourage people from ending up there.
For some people, I've heard people who have been in and out of the joint, who are habitual line steppers, who continually cross that line and commit crimes and go to prison, that they don't care about jail. It doesn't bother them. Mm-hmm. The jail doesn't scare them. That they can operate just fine in jail.
Because they've been so institutionalized.
Institutionalized, exactly. That's the word. Mm-hmm. And I've said this before on the show. I grew up with guys who would go to jail so frequently that when the guy would come home, he'd get out on parole, we would say he was just on vacation, because we knew he was going to be going back in the next month or two. And almost like clockwork, those guys would do something and then ended up back in the joint. Recently ran into one of those guys recently at a friend's house, and I hadn't seen that guy in a long time, and I was very glad to see him. He turned his life around, and he's doing really well. He's just a regular squared up working guy, and that guy finally got it. Mm-hmm. After enough times in and out of the joint, something clicked for him. And, I didn't get a chance to talk to him about what that was, but something clearly clicked for him, and he squared up, and I knew him when we were kids, you know what I mean? So it was really good to see that the dude finally got his act together. But for many people, that just never happens. Mm-hmm. And they repeat that cycle, and they keep breaking the law, and they keep getting caught. And some people, because they're institutionalized, like you said, they find it difficult to follow the rules, and they do things that will land them back in prison. And I don't just mean they commit crimes. They commit crimes and get caught, whether it's on a conscious level or not. They do things that will land them back in prison, because when they're in prison, they don't have any responsibilities. When they're in prison, I heard a story the other day about a guy who was a Mexican mafia guy who did something to go back to prison, because in prison he was a shot caller. In prison he had juice, and on the streets he wasn't able to have that same level of authority or rank or whatever. So for some people, jail is very comfortable for them, or not just jail, prison. That whole penal institution is very, very comfortable for them. But those people, I think, are gone. Okay?
Yeah.
Those people are gone. But the first-time offenders who come in, maybe that shouldn't be a lifetime thing that you carry, a lifetime sentence. Like I'm a believer in a restoration of voting rights, because that to me just seems like it's just a little too targeted there for voter suppression efforts. That would be a thing. Mm-hmm. So, we definitely got to do something different to keep people from reoffending, especially when we can offer them alternatives. Mm-hmm. The problem is you're competing against the lure of the streets, fast money, easy money. And for young men, that's always been young men of every ethnic background and every demographic, portion. That's always been the lure of fast, easy money has always been a problem.
Yeah, I think it's an oversimplification, though.
Of course it is. Of course it is.
I mean, because I think that if you were to ask people, gee, would you want fast, easy money that's going to end you, has all these negative consequences attached to it, or would you like an opportunity to, grow something and do something and contribute something? Maybe you have.
See, you said grow. That takes time. You lost a lot of people right there when you say grow something.
I disagree.
We're talking about young men, though. We're talking young men. Young men aren't known for patience, right? That's why.
Well, you're talking about young men who've been failed by an education system. So, it's like, where is the hope? Like, the light went out. Like, the people, unfortunately, there are teachers out there, and too many of them, that, close all these windows of opportunities for children of color early, like at 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade. They want to tell you that, he's not going to do this, he's not going to do that. And you don't know. It's not how it works,
Right. Well, you don't know what that kid's going through, and you don't know what that kid's talents are. And so I think
Well,
as a
see,
teacher,
and
your
we're
job is
being
help
trained in
explore
my
that.
program to say, hey, stop looking at your students as having deficits. You know, what are the assets?
Right. That's what I'm saying.
What are they coming into your class with?
Right,
They're not coming as blank slates.
They got something, and that's going to help them excel in one area or another. So it's up to you to find that, nurture that, and pull that out of them, right?
Yeah, it's our job. It's our duty.
Very good. Well, you know what? That was a very positive note to end on. We started off talking about adulteration of food and the beans at a certain fast food restaurant that is not Del Taco. And so now we've ended up here. So that was almost like an affirmation. We should have Trish come and write some of Speedy's affirmations, poetess. Hey, we're going to be back here next week. And I don't know when Christmas is, but I'm sure we'll be taking a Christmas break. But we'll be back at it for the next couple of weeks. And so you can follow us on Instagram at Ride Along Radio Show. We are on Facebook at Ride Along Radio Show. You can send us a tweet at Ride Along Radio. Or if you got a really long question or a two-part question or something like that, you can leave it in the YouTube comments down here. Or you can send us an email at ridealongradioshow@gmail.com. Until next week, I am George Holt, and this has been our Ride Along. Trish Navarat Nasingam.
Thank you. You say it perfectly.
Hey, you know what? I haven't said it wrong yet.
No.
I don't think I will now because I've said it enough times.
No, you will not.
All right, cool. Hey, you guys, we'll see you this time next week on the Ride Along Radio Show.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming.
Okay.